So, anyone who's been playing or keeping up to date with Baldur's Gate 3, there's been a lot of drama going on around it because of like how anticipated the game has been. And like it's been making a lot of companies kind of question like what kind of games they're making and just stirring up a shit ton of freaking drama. And oh my god, it's been like only thing we've been talking about for the longest time. So like I want to try to keep up on this and watch this guy's video about it.
What's up everyone, it's Endymion, and I've decided to give the BG3 controversy some time to simmer, but I think it's time to address some interesting revelations that have come to light. So in this video, I'll be covering all the new information surrounding this discussion, but first I want to start by talking about, well, actually myself, which is kind of weird. My first Baldur's Gate 3 video has gone viral, I guess you could say, and it ended up driving a ton of discussion surrounding the controversy. And eventually the video got referenced by IGN in their video that covers the same topic. Destin Legary, who works at IGN, even shouted me out in the description section, but I was quickly removed after people noticed my name. I would assume
ridiculous.
This was done because my channel and my way of thinking isn't exactly welcomed in the various echo chambers within the games industry. I don't find it insulting that I was removed either, since unfortunately when it comes to channels like my own, saying the quiet part out loud constantly tends to piss off the people who don't want those opinions vocalized.
Well, no, like we want good games. Like, people are getting so sick and tired of dropping $70 down on a fucking game that just doesn't deliver anymore. When, like, I guess the game companies don't really realize how expensive things are getting. I feel like that's a big part of the whole freaking issue, to be honest. It's just making it more...
Game developers, CEO of these companies, they don't have... They're not part of the percentage of gamers that scrounge together money to pay for their games. They have no idea.
No, they don't. They have no freaking clue. And then, like, the worst part about it is a lot of these game companies, people don't even play video games that make the games. It's like, what are you doing? You know? It's just ridiculous. Like, I just don't understand it.
So I was likely discredited because I am what the gaming industry hates, basically. This won't dissuade me or change how I do things, but it does mean I'll likely never get an invitation to the Game Awards either, which is totally fine by me. After all, someone needs to keep that industry accountable for how predatory and broken it is. So if it has to be anyone, it might as well as be me, is what I'm saying. But it's pretty cool knowing that my voice, whether people like it or not, is reaching the upper echelons of gaming media, so thank you. Alright. Now, let's get on to the news, and I want to use this chance to extend a helping hand. So hopefully people who hate me actually watch long enough to see that I'm actually trying to help. Obviously, this entire controversy has stirred the gaming industry into a frenzy, with devs saying fans are wrong for wanting more and fans becoming more frustrated that the industry that they love refuses to meet their demands. So let's start with this article from Rock Paper Shotgun titled, Baldur's Gate 3 is Metacritic's highest rated PC game ever, but devs are rejecting cheap comparisons. RPS summarizes the events that led to this moment and how the disparity between consumers and developers are growing with every new release. They then cite one developer named Gary J. King, who I actually think brings up some good points. He started by saying, and I quote, "None of these developers are defending the status quo of AAA here. They're contextualizing the status quo, explaining how things came to be this way and why Baldur's Gate 3 is an anomaly in the space. They're saying that if we want more BG3s, something needs to change. This idea of lowering our expectations is key to this. The AAA industry is increasingly moving towards greater scopes and bigger budgets, ballooning dev times. A single failure can sink a studio, years of people's lives and millions of dollars burned away. More risk equals less risk taking. The industry conditions that birthed Larian and let them hone their craft over several games before they made Baldur's Gate 3 no longer exist. That's why it's unreasonable to expect this to become the new standard. We literally want the same thing as you. If IGN had read the discussion being had in good faith, they'd have known all of this. Instead, they put their stock in some shittier gaming YouTubers that thrive on anything that stokes discontent towards developers. They even credit these guys in the video description, end quote. By the way, when he said shittier gaming YouTubers, he means people like me. It's nice to see what these devs really do think when people actually push back, so thank you for that. Anyway, Gary starts off, I think, saying the right thing, which is that the way in which Baldur's Gate came to be is an anomaly, and that if people want more games like it, the industry does need to change. He's right that the AAA industry is definitely moving towards larger budgets and ballooning dev time. And it's true that the risk that is big budget games is so great that it's also the reason why the AAA industry can't take as many risks. This is why most AAA games
I mean, I do agree with that a little bit with the whole risk-taking shit, but the whole like thing about it is like you got to realize like when you get involved in video game developing, like I feel like they're not going using all the resources they have to their advantage and like going out and reaching out to the gaming community and help making their games. That's what the one big issue we've always had with them. They just think that they're a whole high and mighty and that they know what the community wants in terms of games. But then like like most of the game community when they test their game or something, we'll tell them different, and they still won't fucking listen. And they tell us we're just stupid, and that like we're just consumers. What the fuck do we know? And that's the big problem that makes games horrible nowadays.
Games are either a first-person shooter, an open-world game, or both pretty much. They have to stick to what works and what they believe will ensure enough people will want to buy the product. It's also why you'll likely never see a visual novel game with the budget of, say, God of War for obvious reasons. But the part I have a problem with is where Gary says the key is to lower expectations and the variables that lead to a studio like Larian no longer exist. I think the meteoric response to Larian and BG3 is because, largely speaking, the AAA games industry has been nothing but the lowering of expectations for years now. It's gotten so bad that it's universally expected for full-price games at launch to not work properly or oftentimes not even be in a playable state. Too many games, especially in the AAA space, are storefronts first
I love how he's showing the freaking Diablo 4 store.
and video games second, with Diablo and Destiny being prime examples of everything that's wrong with the modern gaming industry right now. I don't think
Like, I was upset with Diablo 4. Like, Diablo 4 starting out was really freaking good. The story's awesome. Like, once you play through it and do it once, though, these seasons are horrible. And the after that, it's the same fucking thing over and over and over again. It's like, they should have made it a one playthrough RPG, that's it. The seasons for Diablo 3 are better. Still. And, like, it shouldn't take I'm sorry, it should not take a game 2 or 3 years after launch to get good. That whole ideology needs to fucking die. Like, and a lot of good game companies that will acknowledge this. Like, look what happened with No Man's Sky. They acknowledge they fucked up. Look what happened with who else, for example? I think, was it Witcher 3? No, Witcher 3 was really good when it came out. I want to say they improved a lot upon it though when it hit though, regardless. What was the other big CD Projekt Red game I'm thinking of? I'm trying to think. Hold on a second. Let me see. What's the other game I'm thinking of? Oh, yeah, Cyberpunk. Duh. The fuck? That's a good example. Yeah. Like, I don't know why I didn't think about it right off the bat. But Cyberpunk, for example, as well. Like, Cyberpunk, when it came out, was, like, horrible at launch. But, like, we knew it was going to be amazing because, like, CD Projekt Red always delivered. And it took them all the time, but they know they fucked up. Like, they admitted they screwed up at launch on the game.
Now it's
right?
amazing, and they're about to make it better.
Yeah, now it's like incredible. Like if you haven't played Cyberpunk, do it now. Like you're missing out hugely on the game. Like the DLC coming out is gonna even
They're
do the game entirely.
redoing the game next month.
Yeah.
So everything that like we're playing now is gonna be different. That's why I'm rushing to beat it. So
Yeah.
I see how it was original, and then I'll play through the new version.
Yeah, it's gonna be incredible. But that's just the example I'm talking about. Is like these other game companies that are following the whole predatory shit of like game shops and shit, and then they do that because they know like people are gonna just keep paying them money to like make those games, and just that's all they care about. Like the second a game has a store involved in it, regardless if it's at this point, like at first people were like okay with the whole like aesthetic shop stuff because it in turn showed that there was no pay to win or pay to play or any of that shit involved. But now it's like pushed in more to the sense like it feels like that's all the focus is. Like especially with Destiny, with all the like hot shit going on with Destiny at the moment. If you don't know about it, it's ridiculous because now it feels like all they care about is making it so it feels like when you get on, there's fucking FOMO every day. Like it sucks more than anything. Like even for me personally, like I don't have all the money in the world to buy shit that my friends all have that they can show off to me in game while playing together. It bugs the hell out of me because then I can't like play with them and like relate in that situation, in that scenario. And I feel like all like game companies don't give a shit or notice that at all because all they want's their money. So like, but like back in the day, obviously when games like didn't have that shit, all you cared about was logging in to play the game that you bought and experience every single aspect of the game that you were able to get together. And that's what people like. That's the whole aspect of gaming that I think the game companies are losing out on. Is that the whole idea was you play together with every aspect. Not like, oh, well, I can't get this because it's in the fucking game shop. Or I can't experience this with you because it's an emote. Or like, you know, express myself the same way because it's fucking bought with real money. It's in the game shop. Like, shit like that breaks the whole industry. It's ridiculous. It's so fucking predatory. I hate that so much.
Lowering fans' expectations would fix anything, since to be real with you, our expectations honestly can't get any lower than they are right now. I fully expect the newly announced Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 to be an absolute hellscape of microtransaction nonsense.
Zombies was the best part about that shit.
Hundreds of dollars from the get-go. And at the same time, I also fully expect the game to run like
I'm gonna freaking say some shit about this, like real talk right now, because Call of Duty was where I started out at when it came to Warzone. And when I started out in Warzone streaming on Facebook Gaming and shit, like at first I thought the games were amazing. And like granted, like hear me out, because I never played Call of Duty games much until that. Like I played the old Call of Duty games, like back when they were really good. Like we grew up with like Call of Duty 1 and like Modern Warfare when it was like new and it wasn't like shit. It was amazing. And nowadays, like all they care about is making money through hackers and cheaters, which they make money through that crap, so they don't care much about banning. If you want a good example of a company that bans amazingly through a fucking first person shooter game that's not even a new game, it's old. What's the game that it's called? That's like really big right now. That's like old school. But it's like blowing up online right now.
No idea.
I can't even find the game I'm talking about. Oh yeah, BattleBit. That's it. BattleBit. Yeah. If you guys want a really good game to play, like, and no one's heard about it, BattleBit's incredible. Like, they had a freaking bandwave live in the middle of their game, like, while people were playing, and you can just see, like, hundreds of names just get freaking bandwaved off the server while people were playing, and they were hackers and cheaters. Like, that's how much the freaking devs care. And it's like an old, like, Minecraft, like, first-person shooter, but the game runs flawlessly, 60 frames per second, has no issues whatsoever, is incredible to play, and it's like, it just goes to show that all these freaking big, major AAA, like, these game companies don't give a shit about good quality games anymore. They just want your freaking money. And like I said, when I started out on Call of Duty, they stopped catering. I mean, they stopped catering to the actual people who enjoyed playing the game and wanted it to improve and get better. And they only catered to the fact that they were making money and not fixing the bugs and the big, like, issues in the game's code. They freaking went, like, to shit. But, like, granted, it's Activision. And, of course, Activision Blizzard's, like, the worst freaking, like, triangle of death right now when it comes to gaming.
Have glitches and miss key features that previous games already had. But don't worry, just ignore those and buy that $15 Anime Girl bundle, consumer, since that's the real reason that game exists anyway. It's also insane that players need to demand even basic features in games as well. Like most recent Battlefield games just launch without a scoreboard, or Diablo fans needed to make new characters just to use them as mules to put all their items into because the devs refuse to increase item capacity. It just proves that the easiest and most welcome of fixes are never
cinematics are amazing still too. Look at this shit.
And the things that make
it's like a give and take with Destiny, and it pisses me off that like the cinematic story and stuff's still really good and fun to play, and then you got the other side of it that's just like, oh my god, you know?
Money like cross-media bundles are always prioritized instead. It's very
Fortnite, okay, I will granted, Fortnite is the best version
Media
of what this needs to be. Like at the most, Fortnite is the best version. Like that's it. The reason why Fortnite, I swear, it works, and why people like are trying to copycat it with like the game companies are, I feel like Fortnite is doing it right though, because you can, if you play the game a lot and you only want to play Fortnite, you get money back and you're able to keep up with the battle passes. That's why recently, like when I started playing Fortnite again, I know everyone's talking shit about it. They had a massive update that made the game beautiful as hell. Like it's incredible now. They have it where like you don't have to do build mode anymore. You play with your friends just like you would like it was like a drop-in Warzone map, like the way Call of Duty should have been. The difference is though, if you play a lot, you can keep up with the battle pass without spending any money. And it even gives you some currency to spend on the store as well. So you don't have to actually spend any money. It's like player friendly. And like that's the only aspect I see that's great about Fortnite. That makes it like probably the top of FPSs still, if you think about it. Like Fortnite's the only game I say gets away with it. Like that does it right.
bundles are always prioritized instead. It's very telling is what I'm saying. And as of the making of this video, the Destiny Final Shape Showcase hasn't happened yet. But if I had to guess, all the coolest sets of armor will also be behind paywalls as well.
And I'll say it again as well too. Like after Final Shape happens, Destiny's over. Destiny's over. Like because the reason why, like a lot of people are sticking with the crap only because we want the end of the story. It's like the same scenario with like Final Fantasy 14. The difference was though, like the hype for Final Fantasy 14 was so huge, and no one had issues with the game. Like still, the community is amazing. So like for 14, the game has a lot going for it. So it was a love hype. Like everyone was so excited to play it and just keep playing the game. No one was like, oh god, please just get it fucking over with so we can quit playing this. Like that's the way most of the community feels for Destiny at this point.
Everything players actually want will only become available to them if they kneel and accept the nickel and diming that is the modern gaming industry. So when your only solution to the growing disparity between your consumer base and your craft is to demand the lowering of expectations, I'm sorry, but that's just not possible. It may have been maybe 5 years ago, but these days it's so evidently clear that studios and publishers just don't care about the player experience. That the only way things get better is if we reject the practices that have become the norm today. Players are definitely...
Stop buying the shit in the store. It's fucking easy. Like, imagine if, like, the games came out and, like, literally not a single fucking person bought something in the game store. What would happen? They, like, realistically, like, they probably never make a game like that ever again. Ever. That's the last time they put a freaking in-game store inside a game. That would be the last time they do.
Definitely not frothing at the mouth wanting to see their favorite studios fail and shutter down. It would break my heart to see BioWare or CD Projekt Red eventually close their doors and disband. I don't want to see Bungie, for example, abandoning Destiny completely. I also would love to see Activision Blizzard, for once in a long time, actually give a shit about the player experience. And not ruin franchises like Diablo or Overwatch with their predatory nonsense. I don't want Diablo's community of millions of fans to suffer and have a terrible time playing the game that they love.
And I'm also sick of those people who try to like give me the whole argument of like, well, we live in a competitive environment where like you gotta like pay to like win and like that's just the way it is, blah blah blah. It's like no, it's never the way gaming was. That's not the way gaming started out to be. It's not the reason why we loved it ever. It's freaking stupid.
Personally, don't wake up thinking I want the gaming industry to burn to the ground, even though people like Gary or IGN probably think I do. What I do want is for the gaming industry to admit that the way it's doing things is not working, and accept that the only way things get better is when they start respecting their customers more. Baldur's Gate 3 is absolutely an anomaly, and it's for all the wrong reasons if we're being honest. It shouldn't be surprising in this much of an issue of discourse that we're fighting over a game that not only works well at release, but isn't a storefront first. The fact that Baldur's Gate 3 is a video game first that looks to meet player expectations should not be torn down or attacked. It's honestly pathetic and incredibly sad that such a basic fundamental meeting of expectations is considered damaging or...
I want to mention something about this too as well. Final Fantasy 14, like I know I didn't say this earlier, but when I brought it up, but they have an in-game store, the Mog Station and shit. But like, here's an important factor of this, okay? Like, listen to this. So if the game itself is really good, and it's been out for years, and it's been like fixed upon, like live service, for example. Like this is what we're talking about for like Diablo and such. If the game's been fixed properly with the gaming community for the player base itself, like all of the quality of life features are in place and more to be brought out just for ideas to make the game even better. But like the majority of things are fixed. There's plenty of features in the game that make the game amazing for what people expect out of the game. The expectations are there. And there's no more really major issues with the game. People are just having a good time. Like go to like Final Fantasy. That's what I'm trying to bring up. Like for example, then you can have a store and then maybe include like some things for the game. Like, it's the reason why people look over the fact that there's a store in Final Fantasy 14. And, like, I don't think people realize that for Final Fantasy. Like, we don't care about the Mog Station because guess what? The game's fucking awesome.
It's all just cosmetic anyway.
It's all just cosmetic. Yeah, but, like, even then, though, that's what I'm trying to bring about. Like, no one cares about the Mog Station because you'll play the game and not even know it exists. Until someone, like, shows you something cool and be like, hey, like, it's the Mog Station. Be like, oh, there's a store? And you'll be like, oh, I've just been enjoying the game because there's so much shit to do, like with your friends, and the game's just awesome. Like, it doesn't bother you at all. But then all these other games like Destiny and shit, like they've pushed the whole spectrum of the in-game store to the point where it's like, oh, this is so annoying. It feels like you have to get involved with the store and you don't want to spend more money than you've already spent on the game. You know what I mean? And it makes you feel like there's not enough in the game to cater to the player at that point. That's when it becomes predatory. Like, that's the way I've always seen it. It's okay to put a store in the game if your player base is happy with your game. If you feel like you've accomplished a game, like if Baldur's Gate, like the way it's going now with the game, if they added, honestly, this is just my personal opinion on it, if they added some kind of like aesthetic thing in the game, I know they won't ever because like that's their motto is to never do that. If they added some kind of aesthetic thing that you can buy extra things for the game, I'd be okay with it because of how freaking huge this game is. I would not be upset with it. Just because that's the example I'm saying. But, like, I do agree that it needs to stop happening, so, like, they shouldn't do it. So just don't do it. So they just, like, they need to remove the idea entirely from the gaming, because, like, a lot of these companies don't know what the fuck they're doing with it. And they think it's just like, oh, let's just add it in, you know, like, this milk everyone for what it's worth.
Or problematic in the eyes of so many devs. There was also an article recently from Push Square titled, Larian Studio CEO responds to raise standard concerns, standards die every day. I really think what Larian boss Sven Vink says here is really worth hearing.
This is a good response.
Says, and I quote, obviously, yeah, if you're a 50-man studio or 10-man studio, you shouldn't try to make a game like BG3. The problem I have is with the use of the word standards. This is video games. Standards just die every day. Things get reinvented. New things appear all the time. When I was starting out in the industry, Assassin's Creed set a new standard. It was over. Nobody
It was such a big deal when
like
Assassin's Creed first came
there
out.
was too much
I was
budget
all over that
behind
shit.
it. And that was going to be the future. Everybody's had to consolidate, blah, blah, blah. That didn't materialize. In video games, there's so much free space to explore still in the creative tree. There are so many games that change the standards to the point that there's no standards was my thing. But I think you should always strive to evolve, especially in this medium, which is different than any other media in the sense that technological evolution has always been a big part of it. There's always been innovation, but at the same time, it doesn't require massive technological evolution to do something crazy and cool and different than what anybody else has done before, end quote. What Larian's boss says here is true, that there isn't one single standard but multiple ones at any given time. And that we're focusing on the wrong things here as well.
I'm excited to watch something like that as well.
BG3 has set a new standard for RPGs is true. There's just no denying that. But I would say Elden Ring also set a new standard for open world games. And I think The Witcher 3 has also set their own standard for the quality of quests and story in an RPG all those years back too. Destiny 2, I would argue, has set a standard for how good a first-person shooter game should feel, and games like Final Fantasy 16 have set new standards for cinematics in gaming.
Have you noticed, like, here's the thing, too, have you noticed all of these major game launches, too, like, are from companies that fucking care, and they showed that they care? Like, Final Fantasy 16, like, and the funny thing is, like, a huge part of the player base gets so pissed about the games, too. I don't fucking understand. I don't understand why they're getting so mad over them. Like, they're good games. Like, the whole thing with Final Fantasy 16, they've innovated. Like, Final Fantasy is, like, 16 is, like, the best game to come out for Final Fantasy. Like, regardless of other people's opinions, I'm sorry that, like, bitch that it's not turn-based, or bitch that it's not the old Final Fantasy, or it's not my Final Fantasy. You can't stick with the same shit. You have to innovate and try new things. Like he just mentioned before, game companies have to take risks. Otherwise, like, you're stuck with the same shit over and over again, like, and then it gets stale and boring. And, like, as much as people will be like, well, I like the old stuff, it's like, dude, like, come on. After how many years, like, look what happened with fucking WoW. I'm gonna give a good example. Look what happened with WoW. It eventually freaking dies. Everything good ends. Nothing good stays good forever. Like, that's the way it is. I'm sorry. You have to learn to move on and try new things. That's just a life example. You can't stick with the same shit and expect to stay good. It won't. Because it's gonna get boring eventually. I don't care if you're someone who's like, oh, it won't get boring for me. It's like, you are the minority then. I'm sorry. Like, when it comes to a game company or a game industry that knows what they're doing, like games like these for From Software, Final Fantasy, with Square Enix and all these game companies that are really good, CD Projekt Red, they know what they're doing. And I bet you Larian Studios too, if they're smart and like what they did with Baldur's Gate 3, hell, if they make another freaking game just like Baldur's Gate 3, it's gonna be an entirely different experience, just like they did with this. And it's gonna take a long time for them to make it too. So like, the gaming community side of things, people that are doing this shit, saying these games are horrible and shit, man, you need to change your outlook and your whole like mentality on this shit. True, if you're stuck in your feels about how old games are better, play old games. No need to be mad that things change. Exactly. That's like, it's like, what are we gonna have a new like are we gonna start labeling gaming like gamers like boomer gamers? Are we gonna start calling them boomer gamers now? Or like they just cannot accept the fact that games move on, and that we gotta stop catering to these people that like think these games are horrible and shit on them because they're not like the old games. Hell, I grew up with the old games and love them and still love the new games, and I'm a gamer. So what the hell happened? Like, where are these people at? Where are they? I don't understand, man.
We're not saying now that every game in the AAA industry needs to have the storytelling and content quantity of Baldur's Gate, with the shooting mechanics of Destiny and the cinematic feel of Final Fantasy. All players are asking of this industry that has been rotting at its core for years now is to meet them halfway and admit that the way things have been going is not respectful or understanding of the very people whose money, dedication, and time allow it to exist. We're not asking for every game to be Baldur's Gate 3. We're just asking for you, the developers, studios, and publishers, to stop seeing us as cash cows. To instead see us as people who want to have fun, who don't want every freaking game we buy or play to be a store that expects us to pay every day in order to play it.
And you know what they'll respond to that is? It's been the same response forever. Oh, they don't know what they're talking about. Gamers are just children or kids. They don't know what they're talking about. Fuck the consumer. That's literally what they think. That's literally what a lot of devs think.
We just want our time, money, and our dedication to the properties we love, whether it's Baldur's Gate, Call of Duty, and more, to be respected and not taken advantage of every waking second. This is why this debate has really exposed a lot of these devs and the games that they work on as being the true problem at the heart of this.
And I know another thing is too, like the reason why they're getting pushed into a corner now this whole year. Has anyone noticed this year that like a lot of really amazing games have come out? Like, and everyone, like my buddy and me talked about it too. My buddy Anti and me mentioned that like the reason being is because this is the COVID drought is ending finally. Like the big COVID drought that happened is almost over now. Like the bottleneck that occurred where all these games were pushed back in development, the games are starting to come out now. Like starting out with what happened with Hogwarts Legacy. That kickstarted it. Hogwarts Legacy, amazing freaking game. Despite the drama, screw the freaking people making the drama. The game's amazing. Like all the people who grew up with Harry Potter, we wanted a Harry Potter game that slapped forever, and it finally delivered. Zelda, for instance, with Breath of the Wild coming with Tears of the Kingdom. Tears of the Kingdom was incredible, amazing game. That's another one. And then this coming like Baldur's Gate. We've got Starfield coming out. We've got not just Starfield, we got Flames of Rubicon. Like, there's so many freaking games coming out now this year that is just like, oh my god, are you kidding me? I can't even keep up myself as a content creator, and that says a lot because I have a job IRL, and like I wish I could do content on them all the time, but dude, like there's another big reason why these huge game companies games, and Diablo 4 was up there until we saw the cash shop. And then the freaking first season dropped, and we're like, nah, fuck you. We want these games that are coming out now that are like, no, we don't want that in the game. We want to care about the players. Alan Wake 2 from Remedy in October is the game that's got me the hypest. Yeah, Alan Wake 2 even. See, Alan Wake's a great game as well. 100% I'm sick of every company in the world trying to sell me a piece of shit for $15 a month, trying to tell me I should be happy for the opportunity. Like, nah, fam, I can just go outside or read a fucking book. Exactly, Sarah. Holy shit, yeah. That's like a great example. Like, these guys are so, I guess it's because, like, for the longest time, I feel like they've been allowed to just deliver games and only care about the cash shop for way too long, I feel like. And they've gotten so damn greedy, man. And it's sad that it's like the longest time we've been good at like keeping the political real life environment with everything being about money away from the gaming industry. And finally it got to a point where it's just like, nah, man, this shit needs to stop. That's not what we wanted from the gaming community. It's not.
I love Destiny, but it frustrates me to no end to see Bungie becoming more like Activision Blizzard with every release they have for the game. To the point that many would argue that Bungie, when it was still contracted with Activision to make Destiny, was actually better than the post-Activision split Bungie of today. Somehow, Bungie became free to make their own decisions, and that has resulted in their games and quality becoming worse, when they assured us the opposite would be true. You can't tell me that as a developer, consumer, writer, or whatever, that the absolute state of modern gaming is not in a miasma of garbage right now. And then getting mad that people are actually excited for once in a long time about a new game is now a problem and shouldn't be expected. How dare any of these devs or executives sit there and be angry that consumers are actually happy for once in their lives when they buy a game? And it's really telling to me that instead of celebrating and learning from the success of BG3, the modern game industry's response is instead that it's a problem and must be pulled down to their level instead. Larian's boss had more to say on standards of gaming as well, which he said, and I quote, "We really just tried to make our game, so we were surprised when we saw that there was so much commotion about it. And it's just a weird thing, so it's hard to say that it's a standard. It offers a lot, that's for sure, and it offers what we would like to see in an RPG. So I hope a lot of people will make games like ours because that's what I and the rest of our team want to play, but there's a lot of other stuff that we want to play. Everybody played Disco Elysium, that was made by a much smaller team, and it was a great and fantastic game. So that's a standard now, but I'm a big fan of Into the Breach. That's a standard for me. So you've got a whole bunch of standards out there. The only game that exists in the universe for my youngest son is Minecraft.
Dude, Flames of Rubicon's gonna revolutionize PvP. I'm telling you right now. I'm saying it right now. Like, you watch.
That's a standard for him. From a player's point of view, I would come to expect that the platform holders at least set the standards because that's how it usually has been in the past. They always say, here's the guiding light, people, this is possible now, so go and do stuff with it. That's always been how I looked at platforms, end quote. Sven is right again, since unlike many of these other devs, he's not looking to pull others down or attack them. He fully acknowledges that his team and their game will set a new standard, and he hopes that its existence doesn't damage or ruin the industry, but instead shows others that it's possible to still make great games and take risks. Ultimately, I think what these devs that are against this are doing is that they're taking the wrong lessons away from this. Like I've said in previous videos about this, we don't expect every game to be Baldur's Gate 3 in terms of size. But what we do and should expect is to receive a fully functioning product if we're also expected to pay a full price for said product. That shouldn't be controversial or sacrilegious to say.
I also want to say, I think a major reason why games have issues running and shit and like properly working is because they have a fucking store inside their damn game in the first place. You ever thought of that? You ever thought maybe like the game would actually run better and shit if the game store wasn't even a thing in there? I just thought of that. I'm like, maybe that's the reason why it has so many freaking issues anyway. And like they always make excuses up, like for example in Diablo, your game runs shit because the reason why is because it's rendering everyone's items inside their inventory when you come upon a multiplayer or like in a town. Man, are you serious? I wonder what would happen if you removed all the space that's taken up by the freaking stores and games.
I also made a joke on Twitter, or X, or whatever the hell you want to call it these days about this too. This entire situation would be like if you were in a restaurant eating a really good meal, and then out of nowhere, tons of chefs from nearby restaurants rushed your table and started yelling that you shouldn't expect them to meet your expectations. We're not asking you to make the next industry standard every time. We just want you to meet our expectations in terms of your product working and being worth the money that we spend on it. Look,
I said this earlier as well, and I was muted, I believe as well. I uninstalled Diablo 4, like I mentioned earlier, Sarah. Like, D4 should have an offline mode, and I'm like, yeah, I agree with you completely. But I uninstalled it because like I can't play it because all the time because it's like it's super laggy and shit, and not just because of the issues that are plagued with the game and the season being freaking boring as hell, and just the way they're predatory against everybody. And like I'm just so sick of companies doing that same shit over and over again, like we've been talking about. But also because what the fuck was it that I was gonna mention? That's so frustrating to buy a game and have it not be playable. Yeah, thank you so much. The whole issue with I'm so sick of these game companies releasing a game that they expect the game. Oh yeah, they expect the game to be good after a year or two of being out. I think I might have mentioned that already before, but I think a game company should not expect that at all. I think the game should be playable from the start, like he mentioned. I think the game should be completely like working and not having any really big issues. And if they did have issues, then it gets patched. Like, and it just like and quickly as possible too. Not just like, oh yeah, let's just like let the game have freaking issues forever, you know? A year or two and everyone wants to move on to the next thing. Yeah, exactly. Like the game should be at least mostly workable, if not have a couple issues at launch. And like that's the minimum.
may be, as some of you say, a shitty gaming YouTuber, but try to understand that when
I'm not talking about like small bugs. I mean like big issues. Like you can have a few big issues that need fixed, but like small bugs, I get it. Like they can just patch this out in a big patch. Like for example, Baldur's Gate 3 is having a patch they're coming out with here soon that has like 1,000 fixes. But just like general issues.
I make these videos, I'm not looking to attack this industry. I love video games. I love this industry with all my being because I truly believe video games are the ultimate frontier when it comes to entertainment. Nothing even remotely comes close in terms of enjoyment for me when compared to it. Music, movies, it doesn't matter. Video games to me outdoes it all. I am just frustrated like many others that we're all having to walk on eggshells constantly instead of properly talking about and addressing the problems at hand. So if we're willing to have a conversation about the ethics of gaming and
I was like, what? No, I'm good.
player expectations, maybe don't block or censor anyone who disagrees with you in response. Because by acting like as a game dev or executive that you are some amazing being standing on Mount Olympus, and we're all just lowly humans who must bow to your greatness, it's just not how this works.
No, it doesn't. Like we are the ones spending the money on your freaking product. Like, I don't understand this freaking mentality, man. Like, this is why I hate fucking money. I'm sorry. As much as I know it runs the world, like, I hate it. It's the worst fucking thing. And, like, the people, like, the worst people get a hold of it, they should not be up there. They shouldn't. Look at fucking Blizzard, for example. God. As soon as they get a crap ton of money in there, they're like, fuck it, why not? Just put a crap game out with, like, a store on there. Like, I don't get more money, that's fine. Who cares about, like, what people think? It's just so freaking bad, man. It's like, talk about ruining your damn brand.
Your industry, your livelihood, and your ability to do what you do is determined by us. It's not the other way around.
It is.
And remember that no matter.
And if you also notice that a lot of our game companies recently have started like coming to I was gonna say towards, but like coming to us, the content creators and people that are playing the games, to get their opinions on what they think they should do with the game. And I love that. Like, I love that because like all we care about is a good game. Like, all of us want to do is play a good freaking game. Like, we're not going to care about, like, a fucking cash shop or a bad feature in a game. We want to, like, work with you and make it better. And obviously, we can promote it and shit. So, like, why not come to us? Instead of attacking us, the people who are trying to, like, promote the game and give our review, our honest review and opinion on it. Like, I'm not going to speak for, like, the YouTubers and shit that just make a living off shitting on games. I know there's YouTubers and people that do that, and all they care about is the negative shit, and that's all they care about, instead of talking about, like, the positives on it. And, like, I kind of think there's a balance on that, and you shouldn't constantly just talk shit about a game, especially if it's, like, generally a really good game. But if you're going to be a good reviewer, like, don't get me started on the crap reviewers nowadays, but, like, if you're going to be a good reviewer, you need to help a game succeed. Don't just burn it down. You know what I mean?
No matter how high and mighty you might think you are, even gods can be defeated, so try to understand that this is not about attacking the industry, but this is truly at its core about fixing an industry we all love before it collapses beyond repair. So instead of attacking your fan base, maybe for once, listen and try not to be an asshole. I think that's a good start. But what do I know, right? After all, I'm just a shitty
This is
gaming
a good
YouTuber
video.
who gets discredited for saying the quiet part out loud. But I think even someone like me has every right to voice concerns too. So I hope this doesn't come across malicious, and I hope people come together to talk instead of hiding in their echo chambers. Because if
Yeah,
we don't
no,
talk,
100% agree.
nothing will change, and that's why this problem
100% agree.
exists in the first place. So thank you for watching, subscribe for more content like this, and like the video to help the channel.
Yeah, check his video out, Endymion. I've been watching a lot of his stuff recently, because like he's not wrong, and like this shit needs to stop. I'm so glad that it's coming to a head more than usual lately, because like it's funny because in a lot of other countries, like I think it's over in Europe, right? Like loot boxes are illegal, aren't they? Like in games, like they're not like the games aren't allowed to like be released, is what I mean. But I don't think like they should be allowed in video games in general, like loot boxes or anything like in terms of store shit. Like they should not be allowed. I think they should just completely be removed from gaming entirely, and games should just be strictly only for the players, and like that's how they make their money. It would be so much more of a healthy and gaming environment. It's not even funny.